Life is in constant motion. Each day brings both small changes and major events. Sometimes we feel things are happening too fast. At other times, our hearts are heavy with worry. But the Sixth Patriarch Huineng pointed out that suffering or peace does not lie in external circumstances, but in how the mind receives and reacts to those circumstances. This is the first door that leads people out of the vicious cycle of weariness and anxiety. Many people believe that when living conditions improve, when jobs are more stable, and when they receive more recognition from others, their minds will find peace. However, reality shows that some people, despite having everything, still lack peace, while others, despite their hardships, live very lightly. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng looked directly at the root of the problem. He taught that when the mind is disturbed, any situation becomes suffering. When the mind is at peace, any circumstance can be accepted. Recognizing this is the first step in changing one's inner destiny. In modern life, we easily fall into three states that weigh heavily on the mind: excessive worry about the future, anger over things that don't go our way, and arguing to protect our ego. These three things consume more life energy than any strenuous work. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng didn't teach escaping from life, but rather to turn inward and observe our own minds in every subtle reaction. When we feel worry, we know we are worried. When we feel anger, we know we are angry. No judgment, no resistance, just awareness. This awareness gradually calms the mind. When the mind is calm, people begin to see things more clearly. Conflicts are no longer so intense. Hurtful words no longer have the same destructive power as before. We no longer need to win every argument, nor do we need to prove ourselves right at all costs. At that moment, peace is not something to be sought, but naturally appears as the inevitable consequence of a less agitated mind. This video will delve into three core principles left behind by the Sixth Patriarch Huineng. These teachings, seemingly simple, will change the way you view people, life, and yourself if practiced consistently enough. If you are weary from worry, easily angered, or frequently caught in unnecessary arguments, please take the time to watch this entire video. And if you appreciate the values of mindfulness that cultivate lasting peace, please subscribe to the channel to journey with you daily on the path to a lighter and more profound life. 1. The root of suffering doesn't lie in whether life is easy or difficult. It doesn't lie in whether we are born into favorable or deprived circumstances. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng pointed out that suffering begins in a very close place, the constantly agitated mind. When the mind is restless, every circumstance becomes a burden. When the mind is at peace, even adversity has no power to bring us down. Recognizing this is the first step to correctly understanding suffering and the path to liberation. In daily life, many people believe they suffer because of stressful work, family conflicts, financial difficulties, or unfair treatment from others. However, a closer look reveals that in the same situation, some people become depressed, while others remain calm. The difference lies not in the circumstances, but in their inner state. Those with a disturbed mind are hurt by even the smallest words. Those with a peaceful mind see major events as just a ripple passing by. When is the mind restless? It's when the mind constantly wanders to the past and the future, thinking about what's lost, what should have been, or fearing things that haven't happened yet. When the mind isn't at peace in the present, it creates countless scenarios. Each scenario brings with it feelings of anxiety, fear, anger, and envy. These emotions accumulate day after day, making life feel much heavier than it actually is. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that life is inherently like this. There is gain and loss, union and separation. But suffering only arises when we resist this flow, when we refuse to accept reality and always want it to be different according to our own desires. A restless mind is a mind that always wants to control, to possess, to have everything happen exactly as expected. When life doesn't go according to our wishes, the mind becomes turbulent. Some people spend their whole lives chasing after changing circumstances, changing jobs, changing places to live, changing relationships. But wherever they go, they find suffering, not because they are unlucky, but because they carry a restless mind. Wherever that mind goes, suffering follows. It's like carrying a shadow. If the light doesn't change, the shadow will always be present. Conversely, there are people who live in very ordinary circumstances, even with many hardships. Yet their hearts are light. They don't compare themselves to others too much, don't resent their fate, and don't force their lives into a fixed pattern. They accept reality and do the best they can. This acceptance makes their minds less agitated. When the mind is less agitated, suffering naturally decreases. An agitated mind is also manifested in reacting too quickly. Anger arises before understanding a word. Judgment is made before understanding an action. An event is immediately concluded to be misfortune. All of these are manifestations of a mind lacking stillness. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng emphasized that simply having a pause reduces suffering by half. The pause between an event and a reaction is where wisdom arises. When the mind learns to stop, we begin to see the true nature of emotions more clearly. Anger is no longer an enemy, but merely a state that arises and then ceases. Sadness is no longer an end, but just a passing cloud across the sky of consciousness. When we do not identify ourselves with emotions, we are no longer dragged down by them. This is the inner freedom that the Sixth Patriarch Huineng spoke of. The external world may not change immediately, but when the mind is less agitated, the way we experience life changes. Things that once hurt us no longer carry the same weight. Losses that once haunted us become lessons. We don't need to avoid difficulties, nor do we need to sugarcoat reality. We just need to see things as they are. The root of suffering, therefore, is not that life is too difficult, but that we haven't learned how to live with our own minds. When we learn to observe our minds, listen to our minds, and not let our minds be carried away by too many illusions, suffering gradually loses its place. Peace doesn't come from life being free of storms, but from no longer being swept away by those storms. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng left behind a very simple path. There's no need to abandon life. There's no need to force yourself to become extraordinary. Just reduce your mental agitation a little each day. Reduce worry. Reduce anger. Reduce conflict. When these things diminish, the inner space opens up. And in that space, a person can taste the flavor of true freedom for the first time. 2. Not worrying doesn't mean life is without problems. Nor does it mean turning a blind eye to the future. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that not worrying means not letting things that haven't happened yet steal the life we have right now. When the mind dwells too much on the future, the present becomes blurred. And that's when people begin to lose their peace. Much of life's suffering doesn't come from actual events, but from scenarios that never happened. We worry about losing something, about making mistakes, about being abandoned, about a future that won't be what we hope for. Each worry pulls the mind away from the present moment. When the mind is no longer here, we no longer live fully with what we have. There's a story about a young wife that perfectly illustrates this point. She had a seemingly complete family. Her husband was hardworking. Her children were well behaved. Life wasn't overly luxurious, but it was stable. Yet deep down, she was always burdened. She worried that her husband would change. She worried that their feelings would fade. She worried that one day their marriage wouldn't be the same. These anxieties weren't based on any specific signs. Her husband was still caring. The family was still harmonious. But her mind wouldn't stop wandering. Every time her husband came home late from work, she imagined dozens of scenarios. Every time he was quiet, she concluded that their feelings were cooling. She lived in a future she herself had created, and that future was full of unease. Gradually, these anxieties affected her behavior. She became more inquisitive, suspicious, and inexplicably sad. Her husband sensed the tension, but didn't understand why. Unnecessary distances began to appear in their marriage. Ironically, it was the very fear of losing happiness that was eroding it day by day. One day she heard a lecture on mindfulness and the teachings of the Sixth Patriarch Huineng. He said that the future, which hasn't happened yet, has no right to take away the life of the present. He said that worrying is paying the price for pain that may not even come. Those words struck her deeply. For the first time, she looked back at herself and realized that most of her suffering didn't come from her husband, but from her own mind, which was always rushing ahead of life. She began practicing returning to the present moment, not by forcing herself to be happy, but simply by recognizing it. When she found herself worrying, she didn't blame or analyze. She simply acknowledged that her mind was worried. When she was with her husband and children, she focused on the small things: a meal, a conversation, a moment of silence. Each time her mind wanted to wander, she gently pulled it back. It wasn't easy at first. Worry had become a habit. But each time she stopped nurturing it, it weakened a little. Gradually, she realized that her present situation was actually quite good. What she had once feared had never happened. And if something did go wrong someday, it wouldn't be too late to face it then. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach people to avoid the future. Instead, he taught people not to live in the future until it arrives. Preparation is different from worrying. Preparation is acting mindfully in the present moment. Worrying, on the other hand, is wasting energy on unverified assumptions. When we worry too much, we become tired and fail to accomplish anything well. Not worrying is a state of confidence. It's believing that when you live fully in the present, you'll have enough clarity to face whatever comes your way. It's believing that life is unpredictable, but you have the ability to adapt. With that belief, your mind naturally calms down. The young wife didn't become someone who never worried, but she learned not to let worry control her. She understood that happiness doesn't lie in ensuring the future will always be as desired, but in appreciating and living deeply with what she has. When the mind is here, happiness is here too. Don't worry is not just a slogan, it's a daily practice. A practice of returning to reality. A practice of letting go of imagination. A practice of living in the present. When the future, yet to come, no longer occupies the mind completely, the present is returned to its rightful place. And in that present moment, one finds true peace. 3. Anxiety doesn't arise naturally. It stems from a very deep root in the human mind. Attachment and the desire to control things that are beyond one's control. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng directly addressed this point when he taught that suffering isn't because life is too complicated, but because the human mind refuses to let go. People worry because they want everything to go their way. They want a secure future. They want others to remain unchanged. They want results to be exactly as planned. They want life to follow a safe, straight path. But the nature of life is impermanence. Nothing remains static. When we try to hold on to what cannot be held on to, the mind naturally becomes tense, and worry arises as an inevitable consequence. Attachment is clinging to a fixed image of life, of oneself, of others. When we cling to the idea that everything must be stable, secure, and exactly as we envision it, then any small deviation from that image is enough to cause mental unease. We don't worry about what has happened. We worry because it didn't turn out the way we wanted. Many people say they worry because of responsibility, because of family, because of the future. But looking deeper reveals that behind responsibility lies a desire to control the outcome. Behind love lies a fear of loss. Behind planning lies a fear of failure. When absolute control is not achieved, the mind begins to react with anxiety. A parent worries about their child, not because the child is in real danger, but because they want to ensure their child has a future that meets their expectations. A wife worries about her husband, not because he has changed, but because she wants to make sure their feelings haven't faded. A worker worries not because today is bad, but because they fear losing their current position tomorrow. All of these are manifestations of attachment and control. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when the mind seeks to control the uncontrollable, it only brings weariness upon itself. Life is vast and operates according to laws beyond individual will. Humans can only control a very small part, their own attitudes and actions in the present moment. But instead of focusing on the part we can control, we waste energy on the uncontrollable. Worrying, therefore, doesn't improve the future. It only drains the present. When the mind is drawn to things that haven't happened yet, we're no longer clear-headed enough to live and act effectively in the moment. Ironically, it's precisely because of excessive worrying that we ruin what we already have. Worry makes words tense, actions unwise, and relationships strained. There's a clear paradox. Those who want the most control are often the most insecure. This is because they are fighting against the impermanent nature of life. Every small change becomes a threat. Every change is seen as a risk. The mind is constantly on the defensive, and that is the state of suffering. Letting go here doesn't mean giving up or surrendering. The letting go that the Sixth Patriarch Huineng spoke of is letting go of attachment, letting go of the notion that everything must go according to one's will, letting go of the illusion that simply worrying enough will prevent misfortune. When attachment is let go, the mind becomes softer. When the mind is soft, a person becomes more adaptable to change. When we stop trying to control others, we begin to listen to them more. When we stop trying to control the future, we focus on doing well in the present. When we stop trying to control the outcome, we pay attention to the process. And it is in that process that wisdom and peace gradually emerge. Worrying is also a sign that we are placing our happiness in the hands of external things. When happiness depends on whether others change, whether circumstances are favorable, or whether the outcome meets expectations, then worry is inevitable. But when we bring happiness back inward, to how we live, how we behave, how we view the world, then worry naturally diminishes. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach people to run away from life. Instead, he taught people to look directly at the truth. The truth is that we cannot control everything, and we don't need to control everything to live peacefully. When attachment dissolves, the mind is free. When the mind is free, worry has nowhere to cling to. A person who understands the way is not someone who never encounters adversity, but someone who doesn't let adversity bind their mind. They do their best in the present moment, but don't torment themselves with scenarios that haven't happened yet. They know that when the time comes, wisdom will emerge along with appropriate action. There's no need to pay the price beforehand with anxiety. If you're constantly worrying, try stopping and asking yourself, what am I clinging to? What am I trying to control that's beyond my control? Just see that clearly. Your mind will begin to loosen up. There's no need to force yourself to stop worrying. Just understand why you're worrying. Understanding is the first step towards letting go. The teachings of the Sixth Patriarch Huineng are not abstract or illusory. They are very practical. When we let go of attachments, we become lighter. When we stop trying to control everything, we live more deeply. And when worry no longer occupies our minds, peace begins to appear naturally. If you find this lesson relatable, please like to support the channel. Share this video with others who are struggling with anxiety. And subscribe to the channel to continue learning together how to live peacefully amidst a turbulent life. 4. Following the flow of circumstances is one of the most important keys to resolving worries in life. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that people suffer not because of their work, but because they want to control the outcome. When we understand this, we still strive our best, but we don't bind our minds to the final result. It is this freedom that allows worries to gradually dissipate. People often misunderstand the phrase, following the flow of fate. Many think, Following the flow of fate means giving up, doing nothing, or surrendering to destiny. But in Eastern philosophy, following the flow of fate is inseparable from action. It means doing your part, and then letting life take its course. The story of the farmer sowing seeds is a very simple yet profound image. The farmer understands one thing clearly. He can choose good seeds, prepare the soil carefully, sow the seeds at the right time, and water regularly. But he cannot command the rain to fall on a specific day. He cannot force the seeds to germinate faster. He cannot completely control the sun, wind, pests, and diseases. Therefore, after sowing the seeds, he still cares for them. But he doesn't sit there worrying hour by hour about whether the seeds have germinated. If a farmer sows seeds while constantly worrying about the lack of rain, about the seeds spoiling, about a failed harvest, he will be exhausted before the harvest. But a person who understands the laws of nature is different. He does his part, then continues to live, eat, sleep, and attend to other matters. When the seed is ready, it sprouts on its own. When the weather is right, the rain comes. That's the spirit of letting things happen naturally. Don't give up on the task, but let go of your worries. Don't abandon your responsibilities, but don't take on burdens beyond your capabilities. Those who know how to let things happen naturally understand that life has parts within their control and many parts that are not. Worry arises when we try to grasp everything that doesn't belong to us. In modern life, people worry more than people of the past. Not because life is harder, but because people want to control too much. We want a secure career, lasting relationships, successful children, and a clear future. But life doesn't operate like a plan. It flows like a stream. There are smooth stretches, bumpy stretches, bright moments, and dark moments. Adaptability teaches us to live in harmony with the flow of things. When things are favorable, we enjoy it. When things are unfavorable, we learn. When we gain, we are grateful. When we lose, we let go. We don't fight the current, nor do we drift aimlessly, but learn to swim with it. That is the wisdom of living. Much of our anxiety stems from the fact that we sow seeds today, but want to harvest tomorrow. We demand results before we've even had a chance to cultivate. We want certainty before the conditions are right. This impatience causes inner turmoil. When we understand the principle of acceptance of circumstances, we accept that everything takes time. Every outcome requires the right conditions and circumstances. A farmer understands that very well. He doesn't dig up the seeds every day to see how big they're growing. If he did, the seeds would die. It's the same with people. We constantly dig into the future with worry, speculation, and fear. As a result, the present is damaged, relationships are stifled, and the mind is worn down. Letting things take their natural course helps us restore the spontaneity of life. We continue to sow good seeds, but we don't force the outcome to come exactly as we want. We work hard, but we don't force success to come at the exact time we desire. We love sincerely, but we don't force others to reciprocate according to our own standards. When the mind is no longer forced, it becomes light. When the mind is light, wisdom easily arises. Those who know how to adapt to circumstances are usually calmer when faced with adversity. Not because they are indifferent, but because they understand that panic solves nothing. Only calmness helps find a way forward. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when the mind is at peace, the environment is at peace. It's not that the environment changes, but rather that when the mind is at peace, the way we perceive the changing environment changes. Adapting to circumstances is the foundation of inner peace. Because when we don't resist reality, we no longer waste energy unnecessarily. Someone asked, if things just happen naturally, will there still be motivation to strive? The answer is yes. But that motivation is pure. It doesn't stem from fear. It doesn't stem from worry about loss. Instead, it stems from understanding and responsibility. We do it because it's the right thing to do, not because we're afraid of bad results. The farmer sows seeds not out of fear of hunger tomorrow, but because it is the necessary task of today. Once finished, he lets nature continue its work. It is the same for humans. When we fulfill our duties in the present, the future will naturally find its own path. Going with the flow doesn't weaken a person. On the contrary, it makes them more resilient because they aren't drained of energy by worry. People who don't go with the flow easily give up early due to exhaustion. Those who know how to go with the flow go further because their minds aren't burdened. In life, when things don't go as planned, instead of asking, "Why me?" those who understand the principle of adapting to circumstances ask, "What can I learn from this?" When things go well, they don't become arrogant, knowing it's due to the convergence of many favorable circumstances. When facing difficulties, they don't despair, knowing that circumstances can change. The story of the farmer sowing seeds reminds us that our job is to sow, to nurture, and to live each day with kindness. As for germination, flowering, and fruiting, let life take care of that. When we understand this, worries don't need to be chased away. They will dissipate on their own when our minds are free from attachment. Let things take their course isn't a lofty philosophy. It's a very practical way of living. Live fully in the present. Do your best within your capabilities. And believe that when the cause is sufficient, the effect will come at the right time. When the mind is at peace, even amidst life's many changes, there will still be a stable and secure space within. 5. A person who doesn't worry isn't irresponsible. On the contrary, they are people who understand very clearly where their responsibilities lie and where they end. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that people suffer because they bear the burden of heaven's work. When we learn to let go of what doesn't belong to us, we still work diligently, but our minds are no longer bound by the results. In modern life, many people equate responsibility with worry. They think that not worrying is irresponsible, and not overthinking is superficial. But in reality, worrying doesn't make work better. It only tires the mind. And when the mind is tired, the quality of decision suffers. A responsible person is someone who does what is right and sufficient in the present. A worried person is someone who lives in the future that hasn't happened yet. These two states are completely different. One creates value. The other consumes energy. The story of this businessman who went from worrying to doing well day by day is a clear example. He used to be a small business owner. Every day he woke up with a different worry. Worrying about revenue, worrying about competitors, worrying about customers leaving, worrying about employees quitting, worrying about market fluctuations. At night, even though his body was tired, his mind was restless. Numbers kept swirling around in his head. He thought that it was precisely because he worried so much that he survived. But in reality, his work wasn't progressing any better. Decisions were often hasty. He was easily angered, easily suspicious. The atmosphere in the company was heavy. Employees sensed the tension and worked defensively. An event occurred when he was exhausted. His body spoke before his mind could realize it. During this involuntary break, he began to reflect. He realized that, for years, he had been working in anxiety, not in a state of mind. He worked a lot, but most of his energy was leaking into fear of the future. He met a mentor. This mentor didn't teach him how to make money. Instead, he asked one question: which of his worries could he address today? The simple question silenced him for a long time, because most of his worries hadn't happened yet and couldn't be solved simply by thinking about them. From then on, he tried to change. Not to abandon responsibility, but to change how he handled it. Every day, he focused on doing specific things well, taking care of existing customers, improving the product little by little, listening to employees, fixing small errors in the process. When he finished, he stopped. He didn't continue imagining worst-case scenarios. The results weren't immediate, but the first thing that changed was that his mind became lighter. When his mind was lighter, he listened better, observed more clearly, and made fewer emotional decisions. Employees sensed that stability and became more proactive. The company atmosphere gradually changed. The important thing is, he still has a plan. He still has goals. But he no longer lets those goals tie down his emotions every day. He understands that results are the sum of many factors. His own effort is only a part of it. Doing that part well is enough. A person who doesn't worry isn't someone who doesn't think about the future. Rather, it's someone who doesn't let a future that hasn't happened yet steal their present. They prepare, but they don't live in fear. They have a plan, but they don't equate themselves with the outcome. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when the mind does not dwell on anything, no suffering arises. When working, if the mind dwells on the outcome, every change becomes a source of suffering. When things don't go as planned, we are disappointed. When we succeed, we worry about losing it. This cycle has no end. The businessman realized that his responsibility was to sow the right seeds, and what the harvest would be was up to fate. Understanding this, he didn't become lazier. On the contrary, he worked more regularly because he was no longer so strongly influenced by emotions. Many people confuse letting go with abandoning. Letting go means letting go of attachment. Abandoning means abandoning responsibility. These two things are different. Those who know how to let go of attachment still work, but they don't let their ego be hurt when the results aren't as expected. Those who abandon responsibility avoid responsibility, don't get involved, and refuse to do anything. A person who doesn't worry is someone who knows their boundaries. They know what needs to be done and what needs to wait. When they've done everything they can, they allow themselves to rest and let life go on. They don't punish themselves with repetitive thoughts. In our work, when we work with a worried mind, we often choose short-term solutions, fearing loss and falling behind. When we work with a calm mind, we look further ahead, dare to invest in sustainable value, dare to build a foundation, and dare to wait for slower results. That businessman used to chase every trend for fear of missing out. After shifting from worrying to focusing on doing things well each day, he became more selective. He didn't do everything, only what was right. Revenue didn't skyrocket, but it became more stable. More importantly, he no longer sacrificed his health and peace of mind. The same applies to family life. Parents who worry about their children often become overly controlling. They think that worrying is a sign of love. But excessive worrying creates pressure. When they understand that their responsibility is to teach, to set an example, and to create a supportive environment, and who their child becomes is up to them, parents' hearts lighten, and relationships become healthier. Those who don't worry still take responsibility for their words, actions, and decisions. But they don't equate their self-worth with success or failure. They understand that they are the workers, not the results of the work. When we are not constrained by the expectation of results, we dare to try. We dare to make mistakes. We dare to learn. People constrained by expectations are often afraid of making mistakes, afraid of losing face, afraid of being judged. And it is this fear that hinders development. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that without attachment, the mind arises. The mind arises to act without clinging to anything, to act without attachment, to strive without tension, to take responsibility without burden. That is a very high state of living wisdom. The businessman, looking back after many years, said that what changed his life wasn't a new strategy, but a worry-free way of working. When the mind is free from worry, each day is more fulfilling. Regardless of whether results go up or down, he remains steadfast. Life is full of changes. No one can guarantee the outcome, but everyone can choose how they live. Those who don't worry aren't necessarily living an easy life, but rather because they don't make things difficult for themselves with things beyond their control. They do their best each day and let the results come when the time is right. It's a harmonious blend of responsibility and letting go, of effort and serenity. When you live like that, work is no longer a burden, but becomes a natural part of life. And in that naturalness, peace begins to blossom. 6. Not being angry doesn't mean never getting angry. It means not letting the fire of anger burn you before it can harm others. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when anger arises, wisdom is lost. When wisdom is lost, suffering arises. Anger is like a fire. If you don't recognize it in time, it will first burn away your own peace of mind before spreading to your words, actions, and relationships. In everyday life, many people think that anger is a natural reaction. If you're insulted, you should be angry. If you're treated unfairly, you should be angry. Not being angry is a sign of weakness, but the ancients saw things differently. Anger doesn't make you stronger. It only makes you lose control. And those who lose control are usually the first to lose. Anger has a very distinct characteristic. It flares up very quickly, but its consequences last a long time. A moment of anger can ruin years of relationships. A word spoken in anger can leave a lasting wound in another person's heart and in one's own. There are words that, once spoken, can never be taken back for a lifetime. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach people to suppress anger, because suppression only causes it to accumulate. He taught how to look directly at anger, to see it arise, to see it cease, not to identify oneself with it. When one clearly sees that anger is only a temporary state of mind, one is no longer controlled by it. Anger often stems from a wounded ego. It comes from feeling disrespected, from a lack of recognition, from things not going our way. We get angry. But if we look deeper, we'll see that what hurts us isn't the event itself, but our expectations of it. When those expectations aren't met, resentment arises. There's a very ordinary story. A middle-aged man was a manager. He was responsible, but had a hot temper. Whenever an employee made a mistake, he would immediately get angry. At first, he thought this was the way to maintain discipline. But gradually, the employees feared him more than they respected him. They worked half-heartedly, didn't dare to offer suggestions, and didn't dare to be creative. Once, in a fit of anger, he spoke harshly to a young employee in front of everyone. The employee remained silent, but resigned a few days later. Only then did he realize that his anger had burned a capable person and damaged his own reputation. That evening, he sat alone and realized, every time he got angry, he was the first to suffer. His heart raced. He felt exhausted. His head ached. After the anger subsided, he always felt empty and regretful. Others might forget, but he wouldn't. He carried that feeling for a very long time. From then on, he began to learn how to stop. When he felt his anger rising, he didn't speak immediately. He remained silent for a few breaths, just a few seconds, but enough to prevent the fire from erupting into a blaze. He realized that not speaking when angry was a form of wisdom, not because of weakness, but because he knew how to protect himself. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that the mind is inherently undisturbed. It only becomes disturbed by external circumstances. When circumstances arise, if we do not chase after them, the mind will naturally calm down. Anger is the same. If we do not fuel it with thoughts or words, it will naturally die out. Many people think, I have to speak my mind to get revenge. But what happens after they've vented? They often regret it afterward, because words spoken in anger are rarely wise. They are usually aggressive, judgmental, and deepen the rift. Not getting angry doesn't mean letting others trample on you. Not getting angry means choosing a different time to speak. When your mind is calm, when your intellect is clear. At that time, your words carry more weight. They have a greater ability to resolve the issue. In a family, anger is a very insidious destroyer. Parents, angry with their children, often say things that hurt their self-esteem. Spouses, angry with each other, often bring up old issues. When the anger subsides, those wounds remain, accumulating over the years. Eventually, the relationship can no longer withstand the strain. A wise person knows what to prioritize. More important than winning an argument is maintaining a relationship. More important than venting anger is preserving one's own integrity. Someone asked, if there's no anger, what motivates change? The answer is wisdom and clarity. Change stemming from mindfulness is always more sustainable than change stemming from anger. Anger may produce quick action, but it rarely yields lasting positive results. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng once said, "When others offend us, if we become angry, we are giving them control over our minds. They say one thing, and we suffer for a day. They act once, and we bear the burden for many years." That is self-inflicted suffering. A person who is not in control is someone who retains control. They don't let the words or actions of others determine their inner state. They understand that peace is a precious asset, something that cannot be exchanged for temporary gains or losses. In the workplace, those who don't get angry tend to go further. This is because they maintain composure in conflict. When others are hot-tempered, they remain calm. When others are in a hurry, they take their time. This difference creates a long-term advantage. Not getting angry is also a form of compassion. Compassion for others, and compassion for ourselves. When we understand that everyone acts based on their own perceptions and fears, we stop personalizing things so much. Not everyone who does wrong does it intentionally to harm us. Sometimes they are simply ignorant. Once you understand that, anger subsides considerably. You don't need to strain yourself to defend yourself. You just need to maintain boundaries, say what needs to be said clearly, and not carry resentment. Practice isn't a process. You can't just read something and immediately be able to do it. But each time you recognize your anger a little sooner, each time you stop speaking a sentence a little earlier, you've taken a big step forward. Maybe today, I'm still angry, but the anger lasts less. I might still react, but less intensely. That's progress. Don't blame yourself. Just keep observing. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not promise that there would be no unpleasant situations in life. He only pointed out that we have the right to choose how to react, and that choice determines whether we suffer or find peace. No means not letting the fire of anger burn you first. Before the fire flares up, you realize it. When the fire is just kindled, you stop. When the fire goes out, you remain intact. If you're living in a high-pressure, conflict-ridden environment, try to remember one thing. Anger doesn't solve problems, but calmness does. Every time you remain silent while angry, you've saved yourself a lifeline. If this content resonates with you, take a moment to reflect on how you react to anger. And if you find it helpful, please leave a comment below to spread this awareness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following profound lessons from ancient wisdom. 7. Anger, stemming from the ego and the attachment to right and wrong, is a very deep-rooted source of suffering that the Sixth Patriarch Huineng often spoke of. When we carefully observe anger, we will see that it rarely comes from purely factual events. It arises from the feeling that the ego is threatened, denied, belittled, and from clinging to one's own viewpoint as an absolute truth. People get angry not because others are different from them, but because they refuse to accept that difference. When we believe that only we are right, that only our way of thinking is reasonable, then any opinion that contradicts us becomes a spark of resentment. At this point, anger is no longer a natural reaction, but the result of clinging to our beliefs. The ego is very sophisticated. It always wants to be recognized. It wants to win. It wants to be in a higher position. When someone says something that contradicts its opinion, the ego immediately speaks up. When someone does something different from what it expects, the ego feels offended. And when the ego is provoked, anger arises as a familiar reflex. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that as long as we still distinguish between right and wrong, our minds cannot be at peace. Right and wrong belong to the world, and the world is constantly changing. What is right today may be wrong tomorrow. What we consider reasonable may be inappropriate to others. If we base our peace on right and wrong, that peace is very fragile. In daily life, we see many outbursts of anger stemming from very small things. A constructive criticism, a reminder, an action that doesn't meet expectations. But behind it all, it's not about the problem that needs solving, but about the ego wanting to protect its position, wanting to prove itself superior, wanting to assert that it's not wrong. There's a familiar family story. A father reminds his son to study. The son responds with indifference. The father immediately becomes angry. He believes his son doesn't respect him. But if you look deeper, that anger isn't just about studying. It's because the father's ego has been hurt. He feels his role is no longer valued. If the father could take a step back, clearly see his own emotions, he would realize that what he needed wasn't obedience, but connection. When the ego subsided, the words would be different. The approach would be different. And anger would no longer be necessary. The same applies to the workplace. Many conflicts don't stem from shared goals, but from who is right and who is wrong, who gets recognition and who gets disregarded. When ego takes center stage, every suggestion is easily misinterpreted as an attack, and every difference is seen as confrontation. Sixth Patriarch Huineng emphasized that when the mind is still attached, wisdom is not clear. When wisdom is not clear, all reactions are defensive. And defense is always accompanied by anger. Angry people often think they are defending what is right, but in reality, they are defending their own image. Being fixated on right and wrong traps us in a cycle of winning and losing. In every argument, we no longer listen to understand, but listen to counter-arguments. Instead of accepting what others say, we weigh it against our own viewpoints. In that state, anger easily flares up. There are arguments that last for years, not because of big issues, but because neither person is willing to let go of their own opinion. Everyone has a point, but neither finds peace. In the end, the relationship erodes, feelings fade, and both lose. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach people to abandon all notions of right and wrong. He taught not to cling to right and wrong. This means still being able to distinguish between what should be done and what should not be done, but not using that as the basis of one's ego. One should not become arrogant because one is right, nor become angry because one is considered wrong. When we don't accept things, we can say what we think is right, but we don't need others to agree. We can maintain our viewpoint, but we don't need to impose it. Then our words become gentler, our hearts more open, and anger has no place to take root. A woman once shared that she used to get angry with her husband very easily. Whenever he did something against her wishes, she would react immediately. After many exhausting experiences, she realized that what angered her wasn't that her husband was wrong, but rather the feeling of not being listened to and not being respected. When she realized that, she stopped trying to win every little thing. She chose to clearly state her needs instead of proving who was right and who was wrong. As a result, arguments decreased significantly, not because her husband changed immediately, but because her ego became less strained. Anger, stemming from ego, also leads us to label others. Anyone who is different from us is wrong. Anyone who doesn't agree with us is our opponent. This perspective is very dangerous because it narrows our world and isolates us. When we see the whole world as wrong, we will live in constant tension. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that a broad mind creates small circumstances, while a narrow mind creates large circumstances. A small matter, but if the ego is large, will lead to great anger. A fleeting word, but if held deeply, will lead to prolonged suffering. The practice of non-anger begins with clearly recognizing the ego. Whenever you feel angry, instead of asking who is wrong, ask what within you is being hurt. Is it the need for respect? The desire for recognition? Or the fear of being looked down upon? When you see this clearly, the anger will naturally subside. Letting go of the notion of right and wrong doesn't make us lose our principles. It only makes us more flexible, lighter, and less vulnerable to hurt. A person who knows how to let go isn't a loser. They're someone who doesn't need to win. In a world full of differences, if we stubbornly cling to our own belief, we will always have reasons to be angry. But if we accept that everyone sees life through a different lens, we will react less, be less stressed, and suffer less. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng pointed out that when the ego dissolves, wisdom arises. When wisdom arises, we see clearly that everything comes and goes. Right and wrong are merely temporary occurrences, not worth sacrificing the peace of mind for. Anger arises from ego and the clinging to right and wrong, but peace arises from understanding and letting go. When we no longer need to protect our self-image, when we are no longer controlled by others' words, when we no longer cling to our own opinions, we open the space for listening and understanding. It's not an easy path, but it's a gentle one. Each time we let go of a little attachment, we lessen our anger. Each time we don't need to be right, we retain a little peace. If you are frequently angry, try looking deeper into your own self. Not to blame, but to understand. Once you understand, anger will no longer be your enemy, but a guide, reminding you to return to humility and mindfulness within yourself. 8. Observing anger and allowing it to dissipate on its own is a profound practice that the Sixth Patriarch Huineng pointed out with direct wisdom. Anger is not an enemy to be destroyed. Anger is merely a state of mind when provoked. When we resist it, it grows stronger. When we chase after it, it burns us. Only when we look directly at it, without judgment, without nurturing it, will it retreat on its own. Most people suffer from anger, not because the anger is too intense, but because they don't know how to deal with it. When anger comes, we tend to react immediately. We speak immediately. We act immediately. And then we regret it. But by then, things have gone too far. Words have been spoken. Actions have occurred. Traces have been left. Anger only lasts for a moment, but the consequences linger. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that the mind is like the surface of water. When the wind rises, waves come. But if you don't add wind, the waves will calm down on their own. Observing anger is about not adding wind to the mind, not adding more thoughts, not rehashing old stories, not justifying oneself. Just seeing, just knowing, just recognizing. When we observe anger, we begin to see that it is no longer a vague mass. We see our body heating up. Our breathing quickens. Our chest tightens. Our jaw clenches. Our mind is filled with things we want to say, things we want to do. Just recognize those signs. No need to fix. No need to change. Just know that anger is present. Many people think that not reacting means weakness, means suffering a loss. But the Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach resignation. He taught mindfulness. Mindfulness means seeing anger before it takes control of us. When we are still mindful enough to observe, we still have the freedom to choose. There's a very relatable story about an office worker. She worked hard, but was frequently reprimanded by her superiors in front of everyone. Each time she felt insulted, and anger would quickly build up. Previously, she would react immediately, either arguing back or keeping it bottled up and feeling resentful all day. Those reactions didn't improve the situation. Her superiors became even more annoyed. Her colleagues became more wary. She was exhausted. She couldn't sleep. At times, she wanted to quit her job simply because she couldn't stand the feeling of being oppressed anymore. After attending a workshop on practicing emotional observation, she tried applying a very small principle. When reminded of something, she didn't rush to respond. She didn't meekly accept it, nor did she retaliate. Instead, she simply paused mentally, realizing that she was angry, her heart was racing, and her emotions were burning. Just a few slow breaths, just telling herself, anger is present. No need to chase it, no need to pursue it. After a few dozen seconds, she realized the anger was no longer as sharp as before. It was still there, but softer. Only then did she reply, in a calmer voice, more concisely. The strange thing was, her superiors calmed down. Not because she was in the right, but because she no longer reacted with confrontational energy. The atmosphere eased, and the conversation ended faster. More importantly, she didn't bring that anger home. After many such instances, she realized one thing very clearly. Anger doesn't need to be resolved. It just needs to be seen. When it's not fueled by thoughts, it weakens and dissipates on its own, like a fire without more fuel. Sixth Patriarch Huineng emphasized that the mind is inherently pure. It is only because of delusive thoughts that it is disturbed. Anger is a strong delusive thought, but it is also just a cloud. If we chase after it, the sky will darken. If we stand still and observe, the cloud will drift away. Observation is not analysis. It's not about wondering why you're angry, because analyzing while angry easily turns into self-justification. Observation is simply knowing how your body is, knowing how your mind is, knowing the emotions that are present. No additional commentary. When we practice this way, we begin to see that anger has a life cycle. It is born, it becomes strong, and it weakens. Then it disappears. It doesn't last forever. But if we get used to reacting, we inadvertently prolong that life cycle by thinking about it over and over again, repeating that statement, imagining different scenarios. All of that is just adding fuel to the fire. Some people say, my anger has a reason. That's true. Anger always has a reason. But having a reason doesn't mean you need to nurture it. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng didn't deny the cause. He only reminded us that clinging to the cause or clinging to anger both keep the mind restless. Observing anger also helps us understand ourselves better. We'll see in which situations we tend to get angry, when we feel disrespected, criticized, unheard, or controlled. These things reflect deep-seated wounds. When we see them clearly, we have a chance to heal, instead of just reacting. There's a very important point. Observation is not the same as suppression. Suppression is trying to prevent anger from arising. Observation is allowing anger to arise, but not letting it control the situation. Anger is allowed to come, but it shouldn't dictate words and actions. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when the mind is clear, external circumstances do not bind. When we observe anger, we are no longer dragged along by it. We stand in the position of the observer, not the one being swept away. This is inner freedom. Within the family, this practice is even more crucial. Much harm stems from outbursts of anger, a harsh word, an impulsive action. It can leave lasting wounds. If only we could step back a little, observe the rising anger, many tragedies could be avoided. Observation also helps us distinguish between anger and necessary action. There are times when we need to speak clearly, to set boundaries. But if we do so while angry, our words will carry aggressive energy. If we wait until the anger subsides, our words will still be clear, but they won't hurt. The employee in the story didn't become weak-willed. On the contrary, she became clearer, calmer, and more respected, not because she was silent, but because she didn't let her emotions get the better of her. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng didn't teach us to become someone who never gets angry. He taught us not to be controlled by anger. That's the huge difference. A practitioner isn't someone without emotions. Rather, they are someone whose wisdom isn't clouded by emotions. Observing anger is a skill that requires practice. Initially, we'll forget. We'll react the same way. But simply remembering later, realizing that we were swept away, is a step forward. Gradually, the gap between stimulus and response will lengthen. And in that gap, we have freedom. When anger subsides, we don't need to apologize much. We don't need to make many corrections, because we haven't made any more mistakes. Peace comes not because the world becomes less difficult, but because our minds become less agitated. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng pointed out a very simple path. See, know, do not follow, do not resist. Anger comes like a guest. We invite it to sit. No conversation, no argument. After a while, the guest leaves on its own. When we understand and practice this, we will see that the greatest strength does not lie in winning or losing, but in the ability to remain unaffected. Those who master their anger are not easily manipulated, and that is the foundation of inner freedom. Observing anger helps it dissipate on its own. It's not some abstract theory, but a practical path. Anyone can take it, with every breath, with every moment. When we choose to observe instead of reacting, choose to be calm instead of exploding, we are saving ourselves before we can save anyone else. 9. The inability to maintain family and relationships due to anger is a very practical lesson that the Sixth Patriarch Huineng pointed out, stemming from the root of the mind. Family breakdowns are rarely due to lack of material possessions. They are mostly due to a lack of ability to control anger. Relationships fracture not because love has disappeared, but because love has been obscured by long accumulated anger. Not getting angry doesn't mean not teaching, not being strict, not setting limits. Not getting angry means not using anger as a tool to discipline others, especially in the family, where every word leaves a deep mark. Many parents believe that strictness, scolding, and anger are necessary for their children to obey. But the Sixth Patriarch Huineng saw deeper. When the heart is filled with anger, even truthful words become like a knife. When the heart is not filled with anger, even gentle words carry weight. The story of a middle-aged father illustrates this very clearly. He is a responsible man. He works hard. He always hopes his son will grow up to be a good person. But he has a habit that is very difficult to break, disciplining his son in anger. Every time his child made a mistake, got bad grades, was lazy in studying, or disobeyed, he would immediately lose his temper. His voice would be loud, his words harsh, and sometimes he would yell at them in front of others. He believed that if he didn't take firm action, his child would become spoiled. The child was initially afraid, but gradually, that fear turned into defiance. His son spoke less to his father, avoiding him and withdrawing. Later, as he grew older, he began to argue back, not because he didn't understand right from wrong, but because his heart was filled with resentment. The father didn't understand. He became even angrier. He felt increasingly challenged. The family atmosphere grew tense. Mealtimes were devoid of laughter. His wife was also exhausted. She had to mediate, but the more she tried to reconcile, the more helpless she felt. Once, after a big argument, the son went into his room and closed the door. The father sat alone. The anger he felt earlier was gone, replaced by emptiness. He began to wonder why, the more he tried to teach, the further his son distanced himself. Why was he right, yet the outcome was wrong? During a conversation with an acquaintance, he heard about observing anger and not letting it lead to words. Initially, he objected, arguing that it was impossible to teach children without anger. But deep down, he still harbored that question. The next time, when his son made another mistake, the anger returned. His heart raced, his chest burned. He was all too familiar with this feeling. But instead of erupting immediately, he tried something else. He remained silent for a few seconds. Just a few seconds. He realized that he was angry. That brief silence didn't weaken him. On the contrary, it prevented him from saying things he would later regret. When he spoke again, his voice was still serious, but no longer harsh. He clearly stated what was wrong and its consequences. No insults, no comparisons, no bringing up past mistakes. His son was surprised. He wasn't used to that voice. There was no shouting, no insults. He was still being reprimanded, but he didn't feel attacked. He listened, though not happily. But he didn't close the door and leave. After that incident, the father began to realize something very important. When he wasn't angry, his son didn't need to be defensive. When he wasn't defensive, his son could listen. Before, every time he got angry, his son only focused on defending himself. No one learns anything in that state. Gradually, he trained himself to take a step back. It wasn't always successful. Sometimes he still lost his temper. But it was different from before. He realized it faster and knew when to stop. Sometimes he would say to his children, "I'm angry right now. Want need a few minutes. We'll talk later." That statement. He had never thought he would say it before. But it changed the atmosphere a lot. His son saw that his father was also human. He had feelings. But he knew how to take responsibility for those feelings, not vent them on others. The family gradually became more peaceful, not because the child was no longer at fault, but because the fault was no longer being dealt with through anger. His wife also felt relieved. She no longer had to intervene constantly. The atmosphere in the house became less tense. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when anger arises, wisdom is lost. When anger flares up, wisdom is obscured. We think we are teaching, but in reality, we are venting our anger. We are venting our anger on our loved ones. A child doesn't need a perfect father. It needs a father who knows how to control himself. Not getting angry doesn't diminish authority. On the contrary, it creates a very different kind of authority. The authority of steadfastness. The authority of someone who isn't easily swayed. When parents don't get angry, children learn how to deal with emotions, not through outbursts, but through recognition. It's the same in marriage. Many couples love each other, but they hurt each other every day, not because their love is faded, but because they're used to reacting in anger. A single word uttered in anger can destroy everything built over many years. Not getting angry helps maintain relationships. Relationships are very fragile in the face of anger. When one side gets angry, the other side either retaliates or retreats. Both widen the gap. If one side is calm enough not to get angry, the flow of conflict will weaken. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach avoiding conflict. He taught facing it with mindfulness. Not being angry is not forbearance. Forbearance is suppression. Prolonged suppression will only make the anger erupt stronger. Not being angry means clearly seeing the anger when it first arises, not letting it lead the way. The father in the story didn't become weak. He still set principles. He still taught his children right from wrong, but his teaching methods changed. From venting anger to guiding, from imposing to dialogue. This only happened when he stopped letting anger control him. One very important thing is that children learn the most not from words, but from how their parents react. When parents get angry frequently, children learn to use anger to solve problems. When parents know when to stop, children learn self-control. The reason we can't keep our families together isn't because there are no more problems, but because the problems aren't being fueled. Anger is like oil. Each time you add more, the fire flares up. When you stop adding more, the fire dies down on its own. Sixth Patriarch Huineng pointed out that when the mind is at peace, the environment is at peace. A family is not at peace because each person carries a fire within them. When one person learns to keep the fire from flaring up, the whole family benefits. The father later looked back. He didn't regret being strict. He only regretted getting angry so many times. When he understood, he didn't blame himself. He simply practiced from the present moment. This helped him avoid getting stuck in regret. A harmonious family doesn't come from no one being wrong. It comes from the fact that when mistakes are made, no one uses anger to resolve them. Relationships are maintained not because they are always happy, but because when sad or angry, there is still composure to avoid causing further hurt. Nothingness is the greatest gift a person can give their family. It doesn't need money. It doesn't need status. It only needs a return to the heart, to observe, to recognize, and to choose not to let the fire of anger lead the way. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng spoke simply, yet profoundly. If the mind is undisturbed, then circumstances will not cause suffering. When family members learn not to get angry, the family becomes a place to return to, not a battlefield. Maintaining a family, maintaining relationships, not by controlling others, but by self-discipline. When one person changes, the entire flow of relationships changes. And that is the most silent yet enduring strength. 10. One of the biggest misconceptions when people learn about controlling anger is that not being angry means suppressing it, but acting wisely. Many people think that not being angry means swallowing their anger, silently enduring it, and repressing their emotions. But the Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach that. He did not teach people to become weak. He taught people to become wise. To suppress anger is when your heart is still burning, but you try to appear normal on the outside. To suppress anger is when you can't look directly at it. You can't understand it. Suppressed anger is like a fire covered with a lid. It doesn't go out. It just waits for the moment to flare up even more. Many people suppress their anger their whole lives. Then one day, even a small thing can cause them to explode, inflicting deep wounds on themselves and others. It's not instantaneous. It's when anger first arises. We see it, we recognize it, and we don't let it control our actions. Anger is still present, but wisdom is present at the same time. When wisdom is present, we don't need to suppress it. We don't need to vent it. We choose the least harmful course of action. The story of a middle-aged truck driver clearly illustrates this difference. He had been driving long-distance trucks for many years. He was used to the pressure, used to the fatigue, used to having to stay alert for hours on the road. He admitted to being hot-tempered, but he thought, that's how it is on the road. If you're not strong, you'll be taken advantage of. One afternoon, after hours of continuous driving, it was hot. The road was crowded. A car suddenly cut in front of him, very close, forcing him to brake sharply. His heart pounded. Sweat broke out. Anger flared up instantly. In that moment, all the familiar reflexes kicked in. Honking, swearing, chasing after them, teaching them a lesson. These reflexes had happened countless times in the past, and each time he felt a momentary sense of satisfaction. But then came exhaustion, stress, sometimes very dangerous situations. This time was no different. Anger came quickly. His chest burned. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. His eyes were fixed on the car in front. He was ready to step on the gas and chase after it. But then, a thought flashed through his mind. If he chased after it, what might happen? It was only a very brief moment, but it was enough for his intellect to intervene. He clearly saw one thing. He was carrying a heavy load, a large truck, a busy road. Just one small mistake. Not only his own life, but the lives of others would be at risk. The anger was still there. It didn't disappear immediately, but he didn't let it control the accelerator. He gently released the steering wheel, slowed down, maintained distance. He took a few deep breaths, not to suppress his anger, but to keep his mind from clouding over. The car in front drove further and further away. His anger subsided as well, not because he restrained himself, but because he hadn't nurtured it with actions. When anger isn't nurtured, it weakens on its own. Just a few minutes later, he saw a scene that sent chills down his spine. That car, speeding and swerving, had collided with another vehicle at the intersection ahead. It wasn't too serious, but enough to cause traffic chaos. The driver sat in the cabin. His heart pounded again, but this time not from anger. It was from fear. He realized that if he had let his anger get the better of him, if he had chased after them, he might have been caught in the accident. Or worse. He said that at that moment, he understood very well what it meant to not be angry. Not being angry doesn't mean letting others dominate you. Not being angry means not letting blind emotions steal your life, your own, and the lives of others. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when the mind is agitated, wisdom is lost. An angry person can no longer see the whole picture. They only see the object of anger and only want to react quickly, strongly. But such reactions are rarely intelligent. Wisdom isn't about complex thinking. Sometimes, wisdom is simply the ability to stop at the right moment. A single pause can save a life. The driver in the story didn't do anything extraordinary. He simply didn't let anger get in the way. That alone made a huge difference. Many accidents on the road, many conflicts in society, many tragedies in life, they don't begin with great malice. They begin with a small, unacknowledged fit of anger. When anger speaks, intellect is silent. When intellect is silent, actions become reckless. Not being angry doesn't mean not defending oneself. The driver wasn't weak. He didn't apologize to the car that cut him off. He didn't blame himself. He simply chose the least risky option. That's acting intelligently. Many people confuse strength with aggression. They think that if they don't react immediately, if they don't retaliate, they lose. But in reality, many times, not reacting is winning. Winning against anger, winning against impulsiveness, and sometimes winning against fate. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach people to escape from life. He taught people to live mindfully amidst life. On the road, in the family, at work. Everywhere there are situations that trigger anger. No one can avoid them. But everyone can learn how not to let anger lead them astray. The driver later shared that from that day on, he no longer viewed not being angry as a weakness. He saw it as a survival skill, especially in a world full of pressure, speed, urgency, and potential collisions. Not getting angry helped him drive more safely, less tired, less stressed. He wasn't always successful. Sometimes anger would still flare up, but it was different than before. He realized it sooner and knew when to turn back. The most important thing he learned was, you don't need to beat others on the road. Just getting home safely is a huge victory. Not being angry doesn't mean you have to restrain yourself. Restraining yourself is passive. Not being angry is active. Actively maintaining a clear mind. Actively choosing actions that cause the least harm. Actively protecting life, your own life, and the lives of others. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng spoke simply, yet profoundly. When the mind is not led astray by anger, wisdom naturally arises. When wisdom arises, every action is carefully considered. There is no need to try to appear kind. There is no need to try to appear strong. Just be mindful enough not to put yourself in danger. In modern life, not getting angry not only helps maintain relationships and families, but also preserves lives. There are moments when just 1 second of not getting angry can change the course of an entire life. That driver wasn't studying any profound philosophy. He was simply learning how to prevent anger from driving, and that taught us a great lesson. No means wisdom is in action, silently but powerfully. 11. Not arguing is the most profound of the 3 teachings of the Sixth Patriarch Huineng, as it preserves merit and keeps the mind free from agitation. Because worry and anger are easily visible, while arguing is often disguised under the guise of right and wrong, fairness, and self-preservation. Many people fail to see that they are creating negative karma simply because of a few words of dispute. Arguing isn't just about raising your voice. It's about refusing to let go in your heart. Even if your mouth is silent, Your mind continues to argue, revisiting past events, comparing who was right and who was wrong, who was superior and who was inferior. When the heart is still arguing, the heart is agitated. And when the heart is agitated, blessings begin to leak out little by little. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that those who argue frequently are those whose minds are constantly chasing after external circumstances. As soon as a circumstance arises, the mind reacts, wanting to correct others, wanting to win the argument, wanting to prove oneself right. But that kind of rightness often does not bring peace. It only brings prolonged exhaustion. In life, there are arguments that bring no value whatsoever. Arguments within the family. Arguments with relatives. Arguments with strangers. After the argument, no one is truly happier. Only the distance widens, resentment accumulates, and the mind becomes increasingly restless. Arguing diminishes merit in 3 ways. Firstly, it diminishes merit through verbal karma. Words spoken during arguments are often no longer gentle or carefully chosen. Even without direct insults, the words are sharp, sarcastic, and full of malice. Each such word is like a needle, piercing one's karmic connection. Whether the other person hears it or not, one's own merit is depleted. Secondly, it harms the mind. When arguing, the mind gets caught up in right and wrong. It is no longer present in the moment. It is no longer clear. A mind that always wants to win is a mind that never rests. Even after the argument ends, the stream of thoughts continues, like a smoldering fire. This drains a great deal of life energy. Thirdly, it damages karmic connections. No relationship improves after repeated arguments. You might still be together, but your hearts have grown distant, and trust has diminished. When the connection is broken, at the times you need each other most, there's often no one left to stand by your side. Not arguing doesn't mean not speaking at all. It means knowing when to speak, when to stop, and when to remain silent. Silence isn't out of fear, but because it's not worth sacrificing inner peace. There's a very ordinary story about a middle-aged woman. She lives in a multi-generational family. Her mother-in-law is difficult. Her husband is taciturn. Her children are in their rebellious teenage years. In the past, she argued almost every day, arguing about meals, arguing about parenting methods, arguing about her husband's thoughtless words. After each argument, she felt she was right, but she was also very tired. There were nights when she lay there, replaying every word, every detail. The more she thought, the angrier she became, the more she felt wronged. Even when no one was around, the argument continued in her head. She couldn't sleep peacefully. She was exhausted, her heart heavy. Once, she heard a teaching about not arguing. At first, she reacted strongly. If she didn't argue, who would protect her? If she remained silent, wouldn't she just be at a disadvantage? But then she tried to observe herself. After each argument, what did she gain? She realized that she wasn't any lighter, not more loved, not more respected, just a fleeting feeling of rightness. But the price she paid was many exhausting days afterward. From then on, she didn't try to force herself to be gentle. She just tried not to argue in small matters. For example, when her mother-in-law complained, she didn't immediately retort. She listened, selectively choosing what was necessary and letting the rest pass. When her husband said harsh things while tired, she didn't immediately respond. She waited until they were both calmer. It was difficult at first. I was still arguing internally, but I stopped talking. Gradually, when I stopped talking, my heart calmed down. Arguments stopped. The atmosphere in the house lightened. Not because everyone changed completely, but because I no longer fueled the conflict. After some time, she realized something very clearly. When it comes to truly important matters, things should be said calmly and peacefully. This is far more effective than arguing while angry. Others are also more likely to listen, not because she speaks better, but because her mind is no longer agitated. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng called this keeping the mind. The mind is not swayed by the back and forth words. The mind remains still, like still water. When the water is still, everything reflects itself clearly. When the mind is still, wisdom arises spontaneously. Avoiding arguments is also a very practical way to preserve blessings. Blessings aren't something far-fetched. Blessings are when you have enough energy to live, enough peace to sleep soundly, and enough lightness of mind to smile. Every unnecessary argument takes away a portion of those blessings. There are people who never commit great evils in their lives, but they are always arguing over small things, arguing to win, arguing to prove they are right. By the time they are old, their bodies may not be seriously ill, but their minds are very weary. This is because their blessings have gradually diminished through repeated, unrecognized acts of anger and resentment. Not arguing doesn't make you a loser. On the contrary, not arguing helps you maintain a proactive position. You're not drawn into the other person's emotional whirlwind. You don't have to react to impulses. You choose to respond mindfully. In many situations, not arguing is the best way to protect yourself. Because when you don't argue, you don't let others decide your state of mind. You don't give external control over your emotions. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not advise escaping from the world. He only pointed out a very practical path. To find peace, first and foremost, do not stir up your own mind. Every argument is like stirring up muddy water. When the water is muddy, you cannot see the way. When you don't argue, not all problems disappear, but the way you approach the problem changes. You see things more clearly, you feel lighter, and you get less hurt. Not arguing is preserving blessings, because the greatest blessings don't lie in how much you gain, but in how little you lose. Not arguing is preserving your mind, because when your mind is at peace, life will naturally be less turbulent. Of the three things, not worrying, not getting angry, and not arguing is the deepest level. It requires a very subtle letting go of the ego, letting go of the need to win, to be right, to be better. When you can let go, you don't lose to anyone. You only win against yourself. And that is the victory that brings the most lasting peace. 12. Every argument is a drain on energy and good fortune. In daily life, many people don't realize that arguments don't just waste words. Arguments silently drain life energy and erode relationships in subtle ways. When an argument occurs, whether big or small, whether you win or lose, the first thing lost is always peace of mind. Human life energy is not limitless. Each day, we only have a certain amount to think, work, love, and learn. When that energy is used for competition, proving right and wrong, and protecting our ego, the things that naturally nourish life are weakened. Some people complain that they're always tired. But when you look back, you see they argue a lot. Arguing at work, arguing at home, arguing in social relationships. Sometimes they don't even argue verbally, but there's always a dialogue in their heads, always debating, always dissatisfied. All of that drains energy like an undercurrent. Every time an argument occurs, the body immediately enters a state of tension. Heart rate increases. Breathing becomes rapid. Muscles tense up. The brain releases defensive responses. This is a natural reflex. But if repeated too often, the body will experience prolonged fatigue and the mind will struggle to recover. Even without strenuous physical activity, the body will be exhausted internally. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that a person who skillfully controls their mind is one who does not let external circumstances pull them away. Arguments are when the mind is most strongly drawn to external circumstances. Just one disagreeable word, one displeasing glance, and the mind becomes agitated. When the mind is agitated, energy is drawn outward, no longer accumulating within. Arguments not only drain energy, but they also subtly erode relationships. Relationships don't break immediately after an argument, but they gradually weaken, like a string being worn down little by little. At first, you don't notice anything, but eventually, even a small impact can cause the string to snap. Within families, small arguments accumulate over the years. They may still live together, still fulfill their responsibilities, but the warmth is gone. Smiles are fewer. Listening is reduced. Relationships shift from close to distant without anyone noticing. In friendships, arguments destroy trust. It starts with harsh words, then comes caution, and finally silence. Not because there's nothing left to say, but because there's no longer a desire to open up. The relationship ends quietly. In the workplace, arguments erode credibility. Even if someone is right, argumentative people are unlikely to gain long-term trust because the confrontational energy tires others. No one wants to be associated with an energy that causes them stress. There's a very relatable story about two brothers who worked together on a small project. Initially, they collaborated very well. They trusted each other and shared information clearly. But over time, small arguments arose. Arguments about how to do things, about dividing profits, about responsibilities. After each argument, they continued working, but a distance had grown between them. Initially, it was exhaustion, then suspicion, then caution, finally a reluctance to speak the truth. Even though the business didn't immediately fall apart, the relationship was already strained. When a major crisis arose, the collaboration wasn't strong enough to withstand it. Each person went their separate ways, not because anyone was bad, but because too much energy had been wasted on the previous arguments. Arguments also disrupt your connection with yourself. When you're constantly in a state of confrontation, you gradually become accustomed to stress. Your mind no longer knows what true relaxation is. Even when you're alone, there's still turmoil inside. You find it hard to feel small joys, hard to be grateful, hard to live deeply. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng called it a restless mind, a mind that is always chasing after reactions. When restlessness persists, wisdom is difficult to manifest, because wisdom only appears when the mind is sufficiently calm. Avoiding conflict doesn't mean evading the issue. It means choosing a solution that doesn't waste energy and good karma. There are things that need to be said, but they should be said with a calm mind. There are things that need to be defended, but they should be defended with clarity, not confrontation. When you don't argue, you conserve your energy for more important things. You have the strength to take care of yourself, your family, your career. You don't have to pay the price with sleepless nights, stressful days, and strained relationships. When you don't argue, the relationship has a chance to be preserved. Even if it's not perfect, it's still soft and has the potential to recover. Many relationships don't die from big mistakes, but from too many unnecessary small arguments. Someone once said, "Every argument is like opening a door for resentment to enter." Resentment isn't noisy, but it's persistent. It lingers in the air, in memories, in emotions. When resentment accumulates, even if the argument ends, the relationship is unlikely to return to how it was before. Not arguing is a very practical form of spiritual practice. Spiritual practice isn't just about sitting still. It's about knowing when to stop. Stop talking. Stop reacting. Stop the ego that wants more. Each time you stop, energy is conserved. Karma is preserved. In modern life, arguments are everywhere. Online, offline, within families, and at work. Many people think that silence means defeat. But in reality, knowing when to be silent is about preserving strength and not weakening oneself. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach people to become weak-willed. He taught people to become profound. A profound person doesn't need to win every argument. A profound person knows where to invest their energy. They know what is worth holding on to and what should be let go of. Every time you avoid an unnecessary argument, you save yourself a portion of life energy, a portion of good fortune, a portion of blessings. These things accumulate over the years and become the foundation for a peaceful life. Looking back, you'll see that the most exhausting times weren't often due to overwork, but rather to arguments. The relationships that hurt you the most weren't often caused by one major event, but by a series of small conflicts that dragged on. Understanding this will make you more cautious with your words, your reactions, and your ego. Not to please others, but to protect yourself. Every time you refrain from arguing, you choose to conserve your energy, preserve your relationships, maintain your peace of mind, and leave your life on a lighter path. 13. A word of retreat can avert 10 times the misfortune. The story of a woman who let go of an argument to mend family relationships. The ancients said, taking a step back opens up a vast ocean and boundless sky. Retreating a word avoids 10 times the misfortune. At first glance, it seems to teach people to be humble and accept losses. But upon closer examination, it reveals wisdom in preserving blessings and good fortune. In modern life, much suffering doesn't stem from major events, but from words spoken without restraint. Words spoken in anger can damage a relationship built over decades. A retort to win an argument can lead to years of estrangement. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when the mind is agitated, the mouth moves. When the mouth moves, misfortune follows. Knowing when to back down is to keep the mind still. There's a very relatable story about a middle-aged woman. She lived in a multi-generational family. Her relationship with her sister-in-law had long been fraught with minor conflicts. Initially, it was just about cooking, raising children, and managing finances. Each time a disagreement arose, both women tried to clarify who was right and who was wrong. Neither was willing to back down. The arguments weren't big, but they were repetitive. After each argument, the family atmosphere became heavy. Mealtimes lost their warmth. The older members of the family were upset, but didn't know how to intervene. The children saw it and started reacting harshly as well. Once, just because of a careless remark made while tired, a fierce argument erupted. Words were exchanged, old issues were brought up, and unhealed wounds were reopened. After that day, the two sides barely spoke to each other. They still shared a house, but their hearts had drifted apart. The woman began to suffer from insomnia. Every day at home was a source of pressure. She always had a response ready in her mind, prepared for the next confrontation. Her mind was constantly tense. Her work outside the home was also affected. She was tired, but she didn't know where the tiredness came from. One day, while casually listening to a lecture on non-anger and non-argument by the Sixth Patriarch Huineng, she suddenly realized that every time she argued, what she lost wasn't the logic, but peace. It wasn't the other person who suffered more, but herself who suffered first. She started by trying something very small. When something upset her, she didn't rush to speak. She didn't immediately contradict. She paused. She simply observed her emotions in silence. She recognized the rising anger. She recognized what she wanted more. Then she let it pass. The first time was difficult. My heart was boiling. But I didn't say anything. The second time, still difficult, but a little easier. The third time, I realized, when I didn't respond, the argument didn't erupt. The atmosphere wasn't warm, but it wasn't as tense as before. Once my sister-in-law said something that really upset me. Following my usual habit, I would have reacted immediately. But this time, I just responded softly, "Okay, let me think about it." And that was it. The conversation ended there. No one won, but no one lost either. More importantly, no one was hurt further. Over time, the other person also calmed down. They were no longer as aggressive as before. Not because they were persuaded, but because they were no longer being drawn into confrontation. The atmosphere in the house slowly changed. Mealtimes became less tense. The words were softer. The woman realized one thing. Backing down doesn't diminish one's value. On the contrary, it helps preserve energy, maintain composure, and leave room for reconciliation. If every situation escalates to the extreme, there will be no room for healing. The ancients said, "Great misfortunes often arise from the mouth, not because of speaking falsehoods, but because of speaking right or wrong at the wrong time, when the mind is agitated, when the other person is on the defensive. Even if the words are true, they become a sharp blade. Stepping back reveals the truth. Sometimes silence is more valuable than explanation. Sometimes letting go of right and wrong preserves relationships. Not every relationship needs a winner and a loser. Some relationships only need peace to last." The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach people to avoid problems. He taught people to see the root cause. The root of the dispute does not lie in the issue itself, but in the ego being hurt. When the ego softens, the words naturally soften as well. When you back down, you give yourself more space to breathe. You don't get swept up in an emotional whirlwind. You retain the wisdom to choose a more appropriate response. That's not weakness. That's quiet strength. In family life, refraining from speaking leads to harmony. In work, refraining from speaking leads to maintaining reputation. In friendships, refraining from speaking leads to respect. It's not always necessary to say everything. Saying just enough is wise. Some people fear that if they back down, others will take advantage. But reality shows that those who know when to retreat are often respected because they don't let emotions guide them. They exude steadfastness, making it difficult for others to push them into a confrontation. The woman in that story didn't become a passive listener. She became an active peacemaker. When it was necessary to speak, she did, but only when her mind was at peace. When it wasn't necessary, she chose silence. That very choice changed the entire family atmosphere. Over time, the relationship gradually healed. Not to the point of becoming as close as if nothing had ever happened, but enough to live more lightly, enough to ease the hurt, enough for each person to have their own peaceful space. A word spoken can avert 10 times the misfortune. It's not about humiliation, but about foresight and wisdom. It's about recognizing that misfortune isn't just about today's argument, but about consequences that will last for years to come. It's about recognizing that maintaining inner peace is more important than refraining from speaking a single word. Life is full of pressure. Every day we face many conflicts. If we try to explain everything thoroughly and clarify every reason, our minds will become exhausted and relationships will quickly become strained. Learning to step back from speaking is learning to protect yourself. It means not letting words become a burden, not letting fleeting emotions ruin long-term plans. This is the way of living mindfully that the Sixth Patriarch Huineng pointed out long ago. When you are slow enough to step back and calm enough to remain silent, you will see that many waves subside on their own. Many relationships calm down, and many seemingly serious misfortunes can actually be avoided with just one unspoken word. 14. Those who don't argue aren't weak. They are strong in spirit. The story of a team leader who gave up arguing and achieved a successful career. In modern life, many people confuse strength with winning or losing. They believe that one must argue to the very end, win every debate, and leave others speechless to demonstrate true character. But the Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught the opposite. Those who don't argue aren't necessarily wrong, but rather don't let their ego drag them down. Not arguing is a manifestation of mature inner strength. Arguments mostly don't stem from a desire to solve problems, but rather from the need to protect one's ego. When that ego is hurt, reason immediately gives way to emotion. At that point, words become weapons, no longer tools for building a better future. The winner in an argument is often the loser in the long run. There's a very typical story about a man who was a team leader in a large company. He was highly competent, hardworking, and responsible. But he had one very obvious weakness. He liked to argue. He argued to defend his point of view, to prove he was right, even about things that weren't really necessary. In meetings, when there were differing opinions, he would immediately counter them, analyzing the situation with sharp reasoning and a firm voice. He was often right professionally, but the atmosphere in the meeting room would usually become tense afterward. Colleagues hesitated to offer suggestions, and subordinates feared speaking up, not because he was a bad person, but because everyone was afraid of being completely refuted. Initially, he didn't realize the problem. He thought he was doing a good job as a leader, protecting the quality of work and maintaining high standards. But gradually, small signs began to appear. Talented employees weren't staying long. Project coordination slowed down. Meetings yielded fewer new ideas. People were simply following orders, no longer proactively suggesting new ideas. Once, during an internal performance review, a senior manager offered some very gentle feedback. He said, "You're capable, but your team hasn't fully realized its potential." That comment made him think a lot. He started to reevaluate himself. He realized that whenever there was a different opinion, his first reaction was to refute it, not to listen. He also realized something else. After every argument, even if he won, he felt tired. He felt uneasy, and sometimes the resentment lingered. While the other person might have forgotten about it, he was the one who brought those feelings home. By chance, he overheard a lecture on non-argument by the Sixth Patriarch Huineng. The statement that made him pause was, "A strong person is one who can control their reactions, not one who always proves themselves right." He suddenly understood. Not arguing doesn't diminish one's self-worth. On the contrary, it can elevate one's status to another level. He began to try to change, not immediately, but little by little, in meetings. When he heard dissenting opinions, he didn't immediately refute them. He asked further questions. He listened attentively. Even when he already had the answer in his head, he still let others finish speaking. It was difficult the first time. I felt frustrated. I wanted to speak up immediately. I wanted to correct him right away. But he reminded himself, silence isn't defeat. Silence is about understanding better. When others are allowed to speak their minds, they feel respected. And he himself also saw many perspectives that he had previously overlooked. Gradually, the atmosphere in the meetings changed. People started sharing more. There was no longer fear of rejection. New ideas emerged. Some were incomplete, but they had potential. He realized that if he had argued from the beginning, those budding ideas would have been stifled. There was an important project. In the past, he would present his proposal and defend it to the end. But this time, he let the team discuss it. He only asked questions, offered suggestions, and made adjustments only when necessary. As a result, the final proposal was better than his initial thoughts. And more importantly, the whole team felt it was a shared achievement. Since giving up arguing, he hasn't become weaker. On the contrary, he's become stronger. When he doesn't need to win arguments, he has more energy to do bigger things. His mind is no longer wasted on petty disputes. His credibility has increased naturally, not because he talks a lot, but because he knows when to stop. His superiors also began to see him differently. He was no longer just a skilled professional, but someone with leadership abilities, someone who knew how to create space for others to grow. That's a crucial element for going far in one's career. No one wants to work with someone who always needs to win. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that when the mind is undisturbed, even the wind cannot shake it. A person who does not argue is one who does not let others' words lead their mind astray. They stand firm within themselves. Therefore, they do not need external proof. Not arguing doesn't mean not speaking at all. It means knowing when to speak and when to stop. When your temper is still high, silence is wise. When your mind is at peace, a well-timed word is worth more than 10 arguments. In the workplace, Argumentative people often get caught up in details, losing sight of the big picture. Those who don't argue maintain a long-term perspective. They don't let short-term gains or losses damage relationships because they understand that a career is a long journey, not a debate. It's the same within families. Those who don't argue aren't necessarily giving in, but rather choosing to maintain harmony, preserve energy, and preserve affection. Sometimes winning an argument can cost years of peace. That's a very high price to pay. The team leader in that story was promoted to a higher position after a few years. Looking back, he said that the biggest change wasn't his management skills, but his ability to avoid unnecessary arguments. Thanks to that, he maintained his composure, retained the trust of his people, and ultimately succeeded in the long run. Those who don't argue are strong enough not to need to prove themselves. They are not controlled by the words of others. They are not swayed by emotions. That is immense inner strength, far stronger than winning or losing through verbal arguments. In a world full of conflict, everyone wants to speak up, wants to be right, wants to be heard. Those who know when to remain silent become a pillar of support. They bring a sense of security and trust. Others want to be near them and want to cooperate. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng did not teach people to be silent. He taught people to master their minds. When the mind is mastered, words naturally become appropriate. There is no need to argue, yet they carry weight. There is no need to contend, yet they are respected. If you're feeling tired of repetitive arguments, try looking back. Are you using too much energy defending your ego instead of building a longer-term future? Those who don't argue aren't weak. They've conquered themselves. And that's the hardest victory, but also the most lasting one in life. 15. Serenity is the result of not worrying, not getting angry, and not arguing. The story of the old woman who lived peacefully despite many hardships. Serenity is not something you can learn in a day, nor is it an innate trait. Serenity is the result of a life process. It is the sweet fruit of not worrying, not getting angry, and not arguing. When these three things are practiced long enough, the human mind naturally calms down. No effort is needed. No strain is required. Many people think that serenity is only found in the lucky ones. Few events. A peaceful life. But the reality is the opposite. Many people only truly find serenity after they have weathered enough storms. When they understand that resisting life only makes them more tired. And letting go at the right time is the wise thing to do. There's a story about an old woman who lived in the suburbs. She wasn't famous, not wealthy, not highly educated. But everyone who met her noticed a strange serenity. Her face wasn't striking, but her eyes were always gentle and peaceful. Her voice was slow and calm, unhurried, without haste. Few people know that her life has been full of hardships. When she was young, she lost her husband in an accident. She raised 3 children alone in poverty, sometimes working from dawn till dusk, other times lacking money for medicine when her children were sick. From the outside, those years would be enough to make anyone resent life and fate. Later, when her children grew up, she faced another setback. One child's business failed, leaving them in debt and forcing them to sell their house. Another child suffered from a prolonged illness. The elderly woman with gray hair accompanied her children to the hospital many times. There were nights when she sat alone on the porch, listening to the wind and the insects, and silently shedding tears. But strangely, she didn't complain. She didn't blame anyone. She didn't resent fate. When her neighbors asked, she simply said softly, "Everyone has their own share in life. You can't escape it. Facing it is easier." The old woman didn't use any profound concepts, but her way of life clearly reflected the spirit of not worrying, not getting angry, and not arguing that the Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught. She didn't worry about things that hadn't happened yet. When her husband passed away, she didn't dwell on what the future held or what would happen to her children. She simply thought, Today, I have to prepare meals for my children. I'll think about tomorrow. When her children were sick, she cared for them day by day, without considering the worst-case scenario. She said, "Thinking too far ahead only makes my hands tremble. And with trembling hands, I can't take care of anyone." Not worrying doesn't mean being irresponsible. She still does everything within her power. But she doesn't let fear rob her of her energy for the present. She tackles whatever comes her way. She leaves tomorrow's problems for tomorrow. That's what prevents her from collapsing prematurely. She didn't get angry either. In her life, she had been spoken to harshly by others, sometimes misunderstood. Sometimes her children would get angry because of their own pressures. But she rarely got angry, not because she wasn't upset, but because she understood that if she got angry, she would be the one to suffer first. She once said something very simple. Anger is like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to die. When you're angry, others might forget, but the anger resides in your chest, burning you first. She chose not to keep that fire burning inside her. Whenever she was angry, she would quietly go out into the garden, water the plants, pull weeds, do something with her hands. Let her anger flow freely, not suppressed, but not exploding either. When she returned, her mind was calm, and her words were naturally gentle. Thirdly, she didn't argue. She believed that many arguments didn't make things better. They only distanced people. When her children argued fiercely, she would often remain silent, listen to everything, and then say a short sentence. It's good enough if each person can keep their home in their heart. Once, a neighbor loudly reprimanded her for a minor matter. She didn't argue back. She just smiled and apologized. The other person was initially resentful, but then felt embarrassed. A few days later, they took the initiative to talk again. As a result, the relationship remained intact. The old woman understood that winning or losing in arguments wouldn't feed anyone, cure illnesses, or make tomorrow better. So she didn't waste her energy on it. She saved her strength for more important things. Because she didn't worry too much, didn't hold grudges for long, and didn't argue much, her mind gradually became peaceful. Not peaceful because life was easy, but because she didn't add more burdens to what was already heavy. Her composure wasn't apathy. She still grieved when her child suffered. She still shed tears at the loss. But the sadness didn't last. It came and went. It didn't turn into resentment. It didn't turn into bitterness. People often say she's strong, but she just smiles. She says, "It's not strength. It's that I no longer have the strength to torment myself." When you're tired enough, you choose peace. Serenity's when things go wrong. Your heart doesn't race. Your head doesn't spin. Your mouth doesn't want to argue or compete. Your hands and feet can still do what needs to be done. That's the state many people seek, but they look for it externally, while it's created from how we react every day. Not worrying prevents the mind from being drawn to the future that hasn't arrived yet. Not getting angry prevents energy from being wasted. Not arguing prevents relationships from being eroded. These three things combine to create a very solid foundation. On that foundation, serenity naturally emerges. The old woman didn't read many books. She didn't preach moral lessons, but her way of life was the most vivid living lesson. Anyone who sat and talked with her for a while would feel lighter when they left. Not because she gave good advice, but because her calm energy radiated to the person she was talking to. In her later years, she lived a simple life. She would wake up early in the morning, sweep the yard, drink tea, and tend to a few potted plants. In the afternoon, she would sit on the porch, watching the sunset. Sometimes alone, sometimes with her grandchildren. Life was unremarkable, but her eyes always held a peaceful serenity. Serenity doesn't come from avoiding adversity, but from not letting adversity consume your mind. When the mind isn't swept away, a person can remain steadfast amidst the currents of life. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught that if the mind is undisturbed, the environment will not be disturbed. The old woman in the story probably never heard that saying before, but she lived by that principle throughout her life. If you're tired of worrying, angry, and endless arguments, remember this. Peace isn't a distant goal. It starts with worrying a little less today, being a little less angry right now, and choosing not to argue about things that aren't worth it. Each time you accomplish something like that, your mind will feel a little lighter. And one day, you'll realize you've become more peaceful without even noticing. 16. These three things are not just moral principles, but long-term survival strategies in modern society. Many people, upon hearing this, don't worry, don't get angry, don't argue. They often think this is advice for monks, for the elderly, or for those who have distanced themselves from the competition of society. But that's a very common misunderstanding. In modern society, these three things don't weaken a person at all. On the contrary, they are a long-term life strategy for those who want to go far without becoming exhausted. Today's society operates on speed, pressure, comparison, and constant expectations. People work not only with their hands and feet, but also with their minds. Every day, hundreds of pieces of information flood their minds. Dozens of relationships need to be managed. A multitude of worries about money, status, and self-worth. Without a strategy to maintain mental clarity, people easily become tired, irritable, and lost. Don't worry, don't get angry, don't argue. On the surface, it seems like a matter of principle. But look deeper. These are three psychological survival skills in a turbulent era. Not worrying isn't about giving up. It's about managing your attention. In modern society, worry has become a huge form of energy consumption. People worry about things that haven't happened yet. They worry about imagined scenarios. They worry about what others think. They worry about whether they'll be left behind. All these worries take the place of focus. People who know how to not worry are those who know the limits of what they think about. They clearly distinguish between what needs to be prepared and what is merely negative speculation. They focus their minds on what they can do in the present, not letting the future steal their energy today. In their work, people who don't worry too much tend to be more efficient, make clearer decisions, and make fewer mistakes due to panic. Don't worry about keeping your mind sharp. In a society where quick and accurate decisions are an advantage, this isn't about ethics. It's about strategy. It's not about managing emotions in a high-impact environment. Modern society places people in a multitude of interactions: the workplace, social media, family, transportation, services. Every day presents an opportunity to get angry, and each outburst of anger can have long-lasting consequences. A person who doesn't get angry isn't someone who isn't provoked. Rather, it's someone who doesn't let emotions take control. In the workplace, a fit of anger can ruin years of relationships. In a family, a moment of rage can leave deep wounds. On social media, an uncontrolled reaction can have lasting consequences. In modern society, those who can control their anger are often the ones who maintain their reputation, preserve their network of relationships, and protect their personal image. Not getting angry helps people act intelligently instead of reflexively. This is a huge advantage in a highly competitive environment. Not getting angry doesn't weaken us. It helps us avoid burning ourselves out in unnecessary battles. Avoiding arguments is the art of preserving energy and relationships. Today's society is rife with debate. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to be right. Everyone has a stage to speak on. But not every argument creates value. Most only drain energy and deepen divisions. Those who don't argue aren't necessarily people without opinions. Rather, they know how to choose their battles. They understand that some people don't need persuasion. Some issues don't require a winner-take-all, and some relationships are more important than momentary right or wrong. In the workplace, argumentative people often struggle with teamwork and are easily perceived as uncooperative. In the family, Argumentative people often create a tense atmosphere. In society, those who prioritize winning and losing often isolate themselves without realizing it. Not arguing is the way to maintain long-term balance. Those who know when to back down often take many steps forward afterward. This isn't blind concession, but rather choosing long-term benefits over immediate victory or defeat. These three things, when combined, form a very stable living system. Not worrying keeps the mind calm. Not getting angry keeps energy from being depleted. Not arguing keeps relationships from breaking down. In modern society, these three factors greatly determine the quality of life and the resilience of a person. Young people who only have ability but lack a strategy for maintaining peace of mind are very likely to burn out prematurely. Middle-aged people who don't learn to let go of worries, anger, and conflict are very likely to become exhausted along the way. Older people who still harbor many anxieties and resentments will find it difficult to have a peaceful old age. The Sixth Patriarch Huineng taught these three things not to encourage people to withdraw from life, but to help them live more fully in life. When the mind is not distracted, we work more clearly, love more healthily, and face adversity more steadfastly. In an increasingly noisy society, those who remain calm have an advantage. In a world full of excitement, those who are not swept away are the free. These three seemingly simple things are, in fact, a long-term survival strategy for anyone who wants to go far while remaining true to themselves. If you look back, you'll see that much suffering doesn't come from circumstances, but from how we react. When we change our reaction, life doesn't need to change much, but our perception of life will be completely different. Don't worry. Don't get angry. Don't argue. Not to become a saint, but to be a human being with clear mind, steadfast, and resilient amidst the turbulent modern society. Not worrying sharpens the mind. Not getting angry fosters kindness. Not arguing brings abundant blessings. These three things may sound simple at first glance, but if we look back at a lifetime, we will see that much suffering stems from worrying too much, getting angry too quickly, and arguing too persistently. Not because life is too harsh, but because our minds haven't had time to find peace in the face of adversity. Don't worry, life is full of challenges, but it helps us face challenges with a clear mind. When our minds are sharp, we don't panic in the face of difficulties. We don't create additional negative scenarios to scare ourselves. We know where we are, what we need to do next, and what we don't need to think about yet. People with sharp minds often move a little slower, but they move very steadily, making fewer mistakes and having fewer regrets. Not being angry doesn't make the world a kinder place, but it helps lessen our pain. When we don't let anger guide us, we don't say hurtful things that we'll regret later. We don't ruin relationships because of a moment of impulsiveness. Kindness isn't weakness. Kindness is when we are strong enough not to need to win with emotions. Not arguing doesn't mean you're always right. It means knowing how to preserve blessings for yourself and others. Every heated argument drains a lot of energy, diminishes respect, and sometimes even destroys relationships. Those who know when to stop, who know when to back down, are usually the ones who maintain long-term success. Abundant blessings don't come from winning or losing, but from harmony and tolerance. These three things don't require practicing far away. They can be practiced right in your daily reactions. When worry arises, recognize it and return to what you're doing. When anger flares up, pause for a moment before speaking. When an argument is about to erupt, ask yourself if it's worth sacrificing your peace of mind. Each time we do this, our hearts lighten a little, our relationships become a little stronger, and our lives deepen a little. Gradually, we will realize that life doesn't need too many conditions for peace. We just need less worry, less anger, and less conflict. If you long for a lighter, deeper, and more peaceful life, save this video to listen to again and again, because things that nourish the mind cannot be heard just once. And if you think these things can help someone else alleviate their suffering, please share them with someone you care about. Who knows? A single gentle sharing from you might be a blessing for both of you.